Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Positive Girl podcast with me, Sabrina. This is the show that helps you become your best self, and today we are talking about the differences between guilt and shame. But before we jump into that, as always, I want to invite you to come say hi to me on social media. Come say hi to me on TikTok or Instagram. I'm at Sabrina Joy Perozo. I'd love to chat with you, become friends. If you have any questions or comments or any ideas for the show, let me know. You're also welcome to send me an email at realpositivegirlpodcast@gmail.com. And then if you look in the show notes below, you'll see a link for an anonymous survey for you to submit topic suggestions for the podcast. So if you don't want to send me a direct message or an email, you're welcome just to submit it there anonymously. There's also a link for you to join the weekly newsletter. And then there's also a link for you to join the Facebook community. And there are just so many cool things for you to look at. So take a look at all those things in the show notes. But let's just go ahead and jump right into the episode for today, which again is the differences between guilt and shame. So I spent a lot of time growing up believing I needed to feel guilty for being the person that I was because I didn't have what others did. My family looked different than others. And I was not always living up to my dad's expectations. I've told you that's part of the reason why I grew up being a people pleaser, a perfectionist, and really a master manipulator because, when you are young, you figure out ways to get what you need that you're not getting from other places to survive. So yeah, that's my experience of feeling super guilty of so many things ridiculously. But what I didn't realize until much later in my life was that the feeling I was actually experiencing wasn't guilt, but it was actually shame. But again, I did not realize that till so much later. It's crazy, which is fine. There's no shame in realizing those things later. It's just amazing how wow, I can't believe I went through so much of my life thinking I had all of this guilt on my shoulders. So if you have a similar story, then it's okay. It's just interesting how you realize what something really is. And yes, I just want you to know there were times I did experience real guilt because I thought or was made to believe I did something wrong. But most of the time, it was shame that was actually ruling my life. I just didn't realize it. And it can be really easy to mix up guilt and shame, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. We can think we are feeling more guilt than shame because we think by being different, by being someone we think is less than, or by getting caught up in thinking we need to change who we are when we make mistakes instead of actually shifting and changing our behaviors, that it's something to feel guilty about, right? And that's why we lean so much towards guilt. And shame feels so taboo that it feels like it needs to be something deeper for us to admit that it's the problem or the issue. So, I don't feel like people immediately think oh yeah, I'm dealing with shame right now. They feel like they're dealing with guilt because it's an easier emotion to understand and gravitate towards. And shame just feels so dirty when people talk about it, which it shouldn't because, it's a real emotion. It's a real thing. It's real feelings that we have that we, need to talk about and discuss and understand. But it just doesn't feel as palatable or the thing that we're actually going through. So let's talk about the difference between guilt and shame because it's really good to understand which one so that when you better understand what you actually are dealing with, what you actually are going through, you'll be able to formulate a better plan of attack to work through it. So guilt is when you feel bad for doing something wrong or you think you did something wrong, whether it's from your own discovery that you did something wrong or someone else's opinion or judgment. Someone else told you that what you did was wrong. You feel bad for what happened, right? It's also something you experience when you go against your own personal values and beliefs. I'll give you a very real world example. There's going to be more of those later, but a example that happened to me today was I literally was driving all the way. I was driving 3 hours north to go see a concert, and I was running behind. And I was I really need to figure out how I can make up time, but traffic was super heavy. But I was okay, you know what? I'm just going to jump in the HOV lane. And if you don't know what that is, it's the carpool lane. And so buses, motorcycles, and then cars to and more can ride in this carpool lane until a certain time. And it was not that certain time yet. It was very, very close. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to jump in the carpool lane because I really need to make some time and there's not a lot of people in it and I'll be able to zoom past all this traffic. However, while I was doing it, I do have a belief that I should follow the rules and that there are rules for a reason, but I broke it. So I did feel kind of guilty in that moment because it went against like one of my personal beliefs is like, you should obey the rules of the road, but I did not. So I was like, oh, it's 15 minutes before, like the rules for the HOV lane end. I'm just going to jump right in it just real quick. Just jump. And I did jump in and out because like there was a little bit of guilt of like, oh, I'm not supposed to be in this lane. And anyway, so that's like a real world example of feeling guilt. Shame is when you feel like who you are, like as a person, like who you are as you, is wrong. Like you just feel like your whole self is wrong. It's a personal belief you have about yourself and ties into self-worth, or rather like a lack of self-worth. And guilt is based on behavior, where shame is based on who you believe you are. So with guilt, like with my example of driving in the carpool lane, when I was the only person driving in the car, so I was not following the rules, it was the behavior that made me feel guilty of getting in the carpool lane. But with shame, which I've definitely experienced a lot of shame, like I told you, without realizing it, and even afterwards, shame is like you believe that you are this bad, terrible, awful person and that you don't deserve anything, you're not worthy of anything, and it's like your whole being like that, it makes up who you actually feel like inward. With guilt, we usually only feel it when we care about how it impacts someone else. And so you're probably like, well, Sabrina, like your carpool thing didn't impact anyone else. It kind of did, in theory. I cared about it because I care about the rules and I care about other people upholding the rules. It's one of my faults. It's one of my toxic traits, I'd say, is that I'm so uppity about people following the rules. And I will tell people so. And it's a bad thing. I'm working on it. But yeah, I have a problem with people not following the rules. And so by me breaking the rules, I feel bad that I'm being a bad example or that I'm taking up a space in the carpool lane when they maybe needed to be in the carpool lane, or like all of these like silly things. But yeah, it's like, it generally when we feel guilt, we know we feel bad because it's impacting someone else, right? But something else you should know about guilt is there is a healthy aspect to guilt, that it keeps us accountable and responsible for things we did that affect others and how we can correct those wrongs. So for me, my wrong would be like, stop driving in the carpool lane when you're not supposed to. For reals. It's healthy guilt versus unhealthy guilt. So this is how we're going to think about it. Like the guilt that I was talking before, it's a healthy guilt because it's really like telling me, hey, Sabrina, you're doing something wrong. You need to stop doing it, right? And, when you're operating in healthy guilt, you will seek forgiveness and you will seek forgiveness and figure out what needs to be done to amend the situation with the person and how you can change your behavior for the future. So for me, there wasn't really any thing that I needed to amend with a specific person. However, I did need to think about how I need to change my behavior for the future of not riding in the HOV lane when it's not like after 7 p.m. if I'm only driving by myself, which is not a huge problem because again, it's like hours away from me. Like the HOV lane that we have near my house is actually across the river, and then I never go there and I never use it. So it doesn't even like relate to me, but that doesn't make it any less thing for me to feel guilty about, right? Sometimes it's easy to brush things off and be like, well, this only happens like once in a blue moon. Like it's a terrible excuse to use. So don't use that. Don't be like me being like, well, I never go there and I just did it this one time. Like, no, it's not appropriate. Just don't. But yeah, so yeah, you figure out how to change your behavior for the future. So for me, it's like, okay, listen, stop doing like breaking the rules of the road. So you are learning and growing from the situation when it comes to healthy guilt. unhealthy guilt, again, we're comparing healthy and unhealthy because there are two sides to this coin of guilt. Unhealthy guilt is when you punish yourself for things that may or may not have been, have affected the other person and are a result of not meeting your own unrealistic expectations. So again, you're punishing yourself for what may or may not have affected someone else. Generally, for unhealthy guilt, it didn't really affect the other person as much as you thought or even at all. And it's also a result of not meeting your own unreasonable expectations, which can easily tie in to perfectionism. Isn't that beautiful? It's an amazing thing. So you end up telling yourself you did something wrong when you really didn't. You're really pushing the boundary on how you can blame yourself for something that absolutely was not your fault. So with shame, let's talk about shame. With shame, you just feel flawed as a person, your whole person. You're like, I am a piece of crap. You feel worthless and tend to believe there is nothing you can change about it. You're like, this is just who I am, how I was built, how it is ingrained in me. It's deeply ingrained. This thought and belief that you have about yourself is deeply ingrained in you. And you direct all your focus to fixing things inward to pick yourself apart. So it's funny because you're not really fixing yourself, but you think you are by really pushing in all of this negativity inward, So you pick yourself apart and you see yourself in the most negative light. And obviously that's not going to fix things. That's just going to make you feel worse. And it's this terrible spiral and cyclical cycle that you're on, that you just continually feel more worthless and more shame. And we can develop feelings of shame from childhood experiences. That's how I got mine. Mental health issues that include criticizing or judging yourself, maybe even being bullied by others, or even the fear of having your flaws and insecurities exposed because you think that them being exposed to other people will make you look terrible, weak, undesirable, nothing or no one that anyone else would ever want to deal with, right? You have this great big fear. And if we don't get a handle on how we allow shame to control us, it could so easily lead to depression, isolation, and an overwhelming fear of being rejected, which doesn't sound as bad when you're yeah, we all deal with rejection. But if it's such an overwhelming fear of rejection, you won't try anything outside of what you know, which means that you won't be able to accomplish goals and dreams and figure out if you have, if the giftings that you feel like you have are actually in play, if you're actually good at the things you want to try and actually discover new talents and skills that you have that you don't even realize yet. And so shame can really have a chokehold on you, to be honest. It could just be so controlling. So right now, we are going to go over, sorry, I feel like I was going to cough. Right now, we are going to go over some real life examples of what shame is, what healthy guilt is, and what unhealthy guilt is. And so we're going to go through those really quick. Well, not really quick, but we're going to go through those, and that will be the end of the show because this will really help you to identify if you are dealing with shame, healthy guilt, unhealthy guilt, having a compare and contrast of what these are. And then the next episode after this, we will be talking about how to work on unhealthy guilt and shame. So the next episode will be talking about how you can work through it. Right now, we're just learning what it is, how to know the difference, and some real world examples for you to be able to, identify it in your life so that you know it's something that you might choose to work on. Okay. So here are some real life examples of what shame is. So shame would say to you, you need to be quick when talking to others because we're wasting or taking up too much of their time. This is one I often experience where it's even now, it's you want to have a conversation with someone, you want to be able to deeply explain something to them, but then there's this nagging feeling inside where the shame is telling you, You're not important enough to be talking to them this long. You need to make it quick, move through it. They don't even care what you're saying. They're just being nice by allowing you to speak to them. So you need to be quick so you don't waste their time. It's so sick, right? Sick in a bad way, so terrible how shame can just talk so down to you and you're like, oh, and you just accept it, right? It's so terrible. Okay. The next example is shame would say to you, focus more on what other people think and say about me. So this is one I also struggle with because I often will focus a lot on what other people's opinions and judgments of me are. And then let those things rule my life, which we should not do. And it's the shame telling us that we're not good enough to figure out anything on our own, that we need to just, live our life by what other people think about us. And that's the best way to please everyone. Shame also says allow anger and aggression to foster and be used as a way to react. So we talk about reacting versus responding. Responding is always the better choice because it gives yourself a moment to kind of think and decide how you would like to respond. What would you like to say and do in the situation rather than reacting, which is allowing your emotions to take the lead and take control and deal with the situation without even considering if you say something that you might regret in that kind of situation. So shame would tell you to allow anger and aggression to foster, to grow, to be the thing that you use as your defensive tool, and to use it to react in situations that upset you or make you feel in a negative way and throw that at people. Shame also says don't step outside of your comfort zone because you might experience humiliation. Again, going back to not trying anything new, having an overwhelming fear of rejection because you don't want to have anyone make fun of you. You don't want to be looked down upon. You don't want any more opinions and judgments than you're already receiving. And you're not going to try anything new because that is such a scary situation. And shame is telling you that you wouldn't be able to accomplish it anyway. Shame also says don't believe in yourself or your abilities to do great things. So even if you know you're really good at something, let's say you're really good, a really great writer, but shame is telling you no, you're not a great writer. You do not have the capability of being as good as this person, that person, whomever. You don't have the ability to stay focused and write several books or to be able to sell them or feel proud of them or anything like that. And don't believe in yourself despite what other people are telling you of how amazing you are. Shame also says that make sure you feel about who you are and what you've been through, even when it wasn't your fault. You have to feel bad about it. Sorry, I forgot that word. I was reading it. I'm what word am I forgetting? Make sure you feel bad about who you are and what you've been through, even if it wasn't your fault. So let's say that you went through some sort of abuse, whether physical or emotional, mental, and shame would tell you that you need to feel bad about it and you need to feel sorry that you allowed yourself to get caught up in it. And any other experience that you've gone through, you got to feel bad about it, feel shame because you allowed it to, it's your fault. You're victim blaming yourself, which is absolutely not true, obviously. But shame will tell you that it is your fault and you're the one that needs to figure out how to fix it and no one else should be to blame. And then the last one for shame also says to not give yourself any grace or forgiveness for mistakes, failures, or accidents because you cannot make mistakes and you need to try to be as perfect as possible and you need to be hitting those unrealistic expectations that you're setting for yourself. Okay, so let's move on to some real world examples of what healthy guilt says. So healthy, remember, this is the good one. This is the one that helps you to learn and grow and change your behaviors and take responsibility for what you've done. So healthy guilt says you hit that person with your car. I know this is an extreme example, but you hit someone with your car and now you have to suffer the consequences. So the consequences could be paying extensive bills, your car getting totaled, maybe losing your license, your insurance going up if you don't lose your license, all kinds of things. And having to endure the knowledge and the pain that you hurt someone. And so you have to suffer whatever consequences go along with that and feel bad about it and figure out how to change for the better. Healthy guilt Also is telling you you knowingly broke the rules to get ahead and now need to amend your behavior and understand why that is bad. So that could even relate to me today. Like, okay, I knowingly broke the rules and entered the carpool lane when I wasn't supposed to. So I need to like amend my behavior, meaning change it, figure out how it needs to be changed, and understand why what I did was bad. It's bad because there are rules. There are rules for the road, and there are signs everywhere that tell you the rules. There's no excuses. I shouldn't have done it. It's healthy guilt. Healthy guilt also tells you you didn't do your part when you said you would, or it was asked of you and now you feel bad about it. So if you said that you were going to help someone like move, or someone asked you to help them move and you said yes, but you didn't, and you feel bad about it, that's healthy guilt. You need to, go and talk to the person that you said that you would do something and then you decided not to. It'd be a totally different thing if someone was like, I want you to help me move, and you did not commit. Then it'd be like, okay, there's no guilt necessary because you didn't commit, right? But if someone asked you or you already committed on your own and then you didn't follow through, that's definitely a good way to have healthy guilt. Okay, healthy guilt would also say you made a mistake, but admit to it and take responsibility for it. So let's say that you broke something at work. You sent a wrong email that maybe had information in it that it didn't need to or it shouldn't have. And so you made that mistake. You admit to your boss, your manager, hey, sorry, I made this mistake. And you take responsibility for it by telling them and saying sorry and asking them what you can do about the situation. And then the last one for healthy guilt is you realize you are engaging in behavior that negatively affects others and decide to change your behavior. So if you're engaging in behavior, meaning you're constantly telling people that they have to do this, that, and the other, or they have to join this thing, or they have to be a part of this to be seen as someone to be respected or important or to become their best self or whatever it is, that is definitely a behavior that negatively affects others because you're continuing to push your ideals onto them. And you realize that and you're feeling guilt about like doing that because it makes people feel uncomfortable and negative, and it's negative to them and they don't want to be around you, and you're trying to figure out why and you want to fix those relationships. You decide to change your behavior, which would also be letting them know you're changing your behavior so that you can fix those relationships. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to talk about some real life examples of what unhealthy guilt says. So I think this will be really helpful because I know that today we're talking about shame versus guilt. But again, guilt has two sides of its coin. So it's important to understand the difference between guilt, healthy guilt, and unhealthy guilt. So unhealthy guilt would tell you that you need to take responsibility for other people's emotions and how they feel. Super people pleasery, right? Like immediately people pleasery. But unhealthy guilt would tell you to do this because, you feel bad, they feel bad, and maybe you had a part in it, maybe you did not, right? You just see them and you want to take responsibility for their feelings and how they feel so you can alleviate the burden from them. And you feel like, somehow it is your fault, maybe just because you were there when they suddenly had the feelings that they did, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever it is. Unhealthy guilt would also say you feel bad when you don't neglect what you want and don't do what someone else wanted you to do. So basically, someone was like, I need you to come over and wash my car, just a random friend, and you start to feel guilty because you said no and you decided to stay home and do your own thing, but you're starting to feel this unhealthy guilt of like, man, they told me they wanted me to wash their car. And despite the fact that I did not want to wash their car, I should have done it because it would have made me look better in their eyes, more accepted, respected, someone that they care for. And it's like a twisted mindset. But yeah, so that's an example of unhealthy guilt where you feel bad that you decided to take care of yourself instead of doing what someone asked you to do out of their own selfishness. Hopefully that makes sense. Unhealthy guilt will also say you think taking care of yourself is selfish. Again, it's like they're related. So if you think that staying home and taking a bath or reading a book or, spending time honoring your emotions and doing journaling or even going to therapy instead of being at someone else's beck and call. An unhealthy guilt is you feeling like taking care of yourself is selfish, when really it's not. It's the most important thing for you to do to better help other people and have the energy and capabilities to do so long term. Unhealthy guilt would also say that if someone gets upset, it must be your fault. Like, even if you weren't even involved, but you were there and you didn't try to do something to prevent it from happening, even though you had no idea what was going to happen. But unhealthy guilt would mean like, if someone gets upset, it must be your fault. It's that classic thing of like, if someone is on the phone or you don't realize what's happening, right? Let's just say that someone was on the phone and then they come into whatever room you're in. This has happened to me before. And they're just like all grumbly and upset. And when they're talking to you and you immediately think it's your fault, that is unhealthy guilt, because how is it your fault? Did anything actually happen? Did anything actually happen for you to actually see the proof that you participated in doing something that would lead them to decide to feel the way that they do, right? Also, it's important to remember that people decide to feel the way that they do, and that's on them. Unhealthy guilt also says that you feel like failure if you weren't able to do everything you or others expected you to do. So when you have super high unrealistic expectations for yourself, maybe you're like, oh, I need to be able to write this 20-page paper in one night, or someone else expected you to come up with a 20-page report for work overnight, and you feel like a failure when you weren't able to accomplish those things, even though you know that the request of those things is out of control and really unreasonable, like completely unreasonable. And the last example that we have for unhealthy guilt is you forgot someone's name that you just met and you feel horrible about it. This is a more laid back example, but it's still a good example of feeling unhealthy guilt. You're feeling so overly guilty that you met Tom and then you see them again the next day and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot your name. I'm such a terrible person. I feel so bad. Please forgive me. And they're probably just like, whatever, I forget names all the time too. But it's a really good real life example of unhealthy guilt that we experience. So hopefully going through each one of these 3 different things and feelings and emotions and experiences has helped you to understand and differentiate each one. Like I said, the next episode of the podcast that comes out at the end of the week will be all about how to work on unhealthy guilt and shame. Because we don't really need to work on healthy guilt because it's healthy and it's necessary to help us grow and learn and become better people, become our best selves. So just stay tuned for that, and I'll have actual answers and tips and advice for you. But that is all for today. So thank you so much for listening to the Real Positive Girl podcast, again with me, Sabrina. Check the show notes below for any signing up for the newsletter, the community Facebook, submitting an anonymous topic for the podcast, checking up and becoming friends on social media, and even email, doing all of those things. But until next time, have a good one, and I will see you all next time. Bye, you guys.